The possibility that Johnny Depp has simply assumed a character so intensely and honestly personal that even the most resilient crew members had to wipe the man who drew us away from weeping notable figures such as the Jack Sparrow, the cunning captain, the Edward Scissorhands, who was reticent, and then now, the fanciful Willy Wonka has stepped into a position with a grounded, devastating and eerily authentic, and the world is starting to pay attention, not only for the show but also for what Johnny Depp can learn from this role himself. The commotion began with just one liked image that depicted Depp on a deteriorating road in what appeared to be a low to the earth, a war-torn city, holding a vintage photo with his fingers were shaking and he appeared older, less emotionally invested and not in the actors portrayed themselves as broken booters, though they had experienced things that nobody should do on the internet, and fan pages started analyzing Theppicher film forums engaged in wild speculation. As soon as news surfaced on the plot, the independent movie is being surreptitiously filmed under whispers of the front is the working title. In contrast to his earlier fantasy-heavy roles, Depp is portraying a bereaved person, this time a war correspondent who has witnessed at least too many things and now finds it difficult to maintain his sense of reality. The movie is allegedly influenced by real life, a reporter covering combat who spent decades of recording battles in various locations. Most of us only sometimes hear about Afghanistan, Sudan, Bosnia, and who finally gave in to the pressure of he captured a character's trauma, loaded with anger, grief, guilt, and sealant. And according to insiders, Depp didn't merely play the role, he actually became it. Those near the production have revealed that Depp was attracted to according to the script, sobbing as when he first read it. He named it up to the shadowest nooks, a mirror of the human condition and more quite similar to the spirits I've encountered in my own history. It wasn't immediately apparent what that meant, but for devoted followers who are acquainted with Depp's own struggles over the years of court cases and hard-to-shade drug abuse and the unpleasantest public images disintegration was in this role is difficult to read between the lines. Depp's work wasn't simply any job. It was an encounter with his personal demons too. Depp, prepared by taking an unconventional route, vanished for almost 3 weeks prior to principal photography started. However, there was no public appearances without the media or paparazzi. He was reported to be holed up in a secluded home in a French countryside within the mountains of ancient combat footage. Originals, written by actual journalists, and boxes of old photos. One participant disclosed that Depp even went as far as consuming solely military food while attempting to live in the man's physical and emotional condition. Well, had been living on the brink for a long time, too long before he came out. Something was different. It was like to witnessing one person wearing the costume as a ghost. The department claimed that he didn't only glance, he appeared exhausted, but in the finest manner feasible. Assuming that makes sense. Such Ash had already started to live a step before the cameras ever began to put out another. Insider explained how Depp got to the set each morning with minimum makeup and in full costume and didn't ever act out of character till the day's filming is over. Director Leela Jordan is renowned for her unwavering approach to content that is emotionally charged. Made a unique choice that required Depp's performance goes above and beyond for important sequences, particularly ones that are focused regarding trauma and bereavement. She discarded the script instead, giving Depp liberty to openly express oneself and to channel whatever happened spontaneously at the time was a risk, but it paid off. According to reports, a particularly dramatic scene stopped the entire set in its tracks. Depp's character in it goes back to the location of a bombing where he previously captured a family a few days before their demise. The script contained just on a direction of the stage. He recalls what Depp did, but it took 6 minutes. Unscripted, fully improvised, monologue-said. Through choking breath and tears, the crew fell silent, in shock. Although they didn't when the call ended, they allowed the camera to roll. When the drama came to a conclusion, there was no later. Leela Jordan was dry on set, characterized that instance as a break in the gap between performance and reality. Johnny didn't just act, she noted, I can't recall what it was, whose recollection it was, but we saw wasn't practiced. It was experienced. The trauma expert for the movie, who had worked on productions that were emotionally charged, prior to acknowledging that they had never witnessed, and the performer taps into something really intimate. So Depp's makeover for the role in its raw form wasn't limited to his internal appearance, also captured the attention of the industry and fans. He surprised insiders. By dropping, he gained substantial weight and his hair grew out unevenly, allowing for the formation of deep lines behind his eyes. He desired the viewers to sense the deterioration of a man who had spent decades on the front lines, without not only of conflict areas but also of his personal struggles. The wardrobe served as yet another illustration of silent genius. Each ensemble in the film was either original or second-hand. Attire worn by reporters during wartime zones. The wardrobe crew wasn't in a hurry to correct creases or enhance the fit. Priority one was authenticity. followed by the infamous webcam is located in Thelict images that caused a worldwide. Depp is spotted holding an elderly Leica is not a prop or a replica, but an original camera from the what most people were unaware of in the 1970s. Initially, the camera was owned by the real journalist who served as the inspiration for the narrative following his death. The family contacted the production offering the camera that was going to be utilized in the movie was a really sentimental act, and one Depp seriously. In fact, he was unwilling to leave it to anybody else. He carried it with him between takes, continuously while occasionally filming Gavin sharing a bed with it. Crew members described how Depp would occasionally talk whispering to the camera during breaks, if it were a living artifact. It was eerie, one assistant grip stated. However, it made sense. He seemed to be in conversing with the man Spirit was portraying. Depp was off-camera say to be introspective and kept for the most part. He wasn't the captivating storyteller with a guitar and strumming individuals had been accustomed to seeing, in interviews rather. He was extremalist in isolation, frequently strolling thescoting alone before sunrise places without sound. At one point during he took out a notebook during a rain delay. I started drawing not sketches, but thorough depictions of the scenes they'd captured earlier in the day. Several of those later the sketches were shared anonymously online, and followers were taken aback by their intensity. The pictures were somber and gloomy, emotionally intense, similar to the man himself, but the production was comparatively tiny, with a limited budget and a skeleton crew, which they were missing in. They made up for it with their hearts. Trailers without food or personal help were shared during the lengthy folding tables. Depp insisted on not receiving any distinct from the rest of the ensembling staff, even offering to reimburse them from pocket for the shoot that day when a Vitalication was last-minutely cancelled. ISN single quotes T concerning money. He was cited as saying stating that the narrative must be as news started to circulate. The emotional intensity of the movie has numerous significant according to reports. Festivals contacted out in the Hapisto obtain exams in advance. But Jordan and the manufacturer Stateway don't want this to be a protective press circus, she said to a reporter. This movie is about sadness and quiet, on topics that don't garner media attention. We wish to recognize that continued enthusiasm keeps gaining followers who have even short videos have been shared on social media. Depp's performance was described as terrible, soul-bearing, and the type of behaving in a way that breaks you. One user wrote, "Johnny isn't acting like someone. Johnny is demonstrating to us how it's like being broken." Perhaps that is the reason this role is so important. It's not about special effects or spectacle. It has nothing to do with box office receipts or franchises. It concerns a single individual, with flaws. Hurt and not scared, to fill a panning a portal further into the silence painful facets of the human condition for Whispers of the Front, starring Johnny Depp. Perhaps line isn't the type of movie that you get paid $1 billion. There aren't CGI-heavy fights or fanciful no adventure on the high seas in fantastical worlds with wildly high expectations for the box office. This has nothing to do with franchise fame or business influence. It has to do with anything otherwise. Something more subdued, more personal, more human. And that change in perhaps its attention that makes it one among his most important decisions to a career. This position is not only an additional character in an extensive filmography, it is a soul-bearing epiphany. Additionally, doing so could simply solidify the legacy of Johnny Depp is not as eccentric a newspaper headline or a character act, but with something artistic, really intimate, painfully honest, and genuinely prend to express. Depp has a lengthy history of frequently vanishing into his roles. He was changing himself so much that was overlooked. The man who created the mask from the recluse with the scissors. The brash pirate has perfected the craft of quirkiness, but the Front's Whispers line eliminates all of that. No imagination, no clothing without any fantastical frills, just Armand and his shattered history. It's the type of performance without the requirement for a dramatic turn of events or a life-size persona. Its restraint is what gives it force. On the Haunted's agonizing silence, excellent pauses and glances that convey more than any dialogue line ever could. And the distinction is that this isn't about escapism, is about facing suffering, residing there, and allowing it to seep into the performance until your confidence is shaken. Conware, the actor in the character end starts with the words of insiders, didn't tackle this project in the same way. He viewed it as just another movie gig. Similar to a reckoning, a meeting with the specters that have plagued him on screen and away from the main character in the movie. A war reporter suffering from PTSD and addiction seems uncannily similar to the Depp's own emotional territorial litigated cases in public, where strained by personal loss, the relentless spotlight of media attention. Those wounds don't simply go away due to the fact that the cameras stop recording, and it appears that this position gave him a means to dagger that allows the weight of his personal experience into something that could have an impact well beyond his own people near the manufacturing are in pain. Discussed instances where filming came to a total stop, not due to a malfunctioning problems with the camera's illumination or a last-minute modification, but due to the sentiment in the chamber gained so much strength that it felt impossible to go on. These weren't your typical films delays. These were the kind of situations that go beyond a typical movie. Everyone in the area could sense it. Energy changed. Something unsaid was filled with the air, seemed to be in the gap. Itself had become more emotional, and the only option was to sit in, keep quiet, and testify according to reports. The most talked about moments took place during a late-night filming, around midnight, when fatigue was already focusing on the crew and actors by purpose. The scene lacked a screenplay. It was among those experimental lineages, moments in which Layla Jordan, the director, ended a scenario in which the actor would allow the performance to be guided by emotion instead of the script. Depp stood in the corner of a bombed-out building a structure encircled by ruins of war-torn props, debris, and fragmented film. A vintage camera hanging from canister's camera started rolling around his neck, and Depp remained still for about 30 seconds later. Something exploded. What the man who followed wasn't acting. Unraveling, he started talking quietly initially like someone recalling a waves. He discussed the loss of helplessness after seeing something so excruciating you wish your eyes hadn't observed it. And he expressed remorse. But it wasn't Tobias if he was speaking in whether or not it was character that made it such. His voice was disturbing as he broke down in tears, grumbling beneath the burden of everything he was dredging up. Members of the crew, including Wu, had contributed to numerous sets, ceased their activities. Some stood, while others lowered their eyes, still utterly mesmerized. No one yelled cut. Nobody ventured, according to the grips was working boom, that we were witnessing a man rip his own soul was open, and we had nothing could only allow him to. One helper. Director subsequently characterized the incident as observing a man admit something he'd never previously, as it said aloud, that it wasn't not for the camera. It was performative. Was painfully, frighteningly personal. The quiet that ensued when Depp eventually stopped talking, it was heavy. For almost a moment, nobody moved or clapped. Minute. Even the person operating the camera was his hand was stuck, shaking a little on focus ring at last. The filmer walked slowly towards Depp without giving credence, but to lightly place a touch on her. Eyes were wet on his shoulder. Eyes as well. It was a moment of the kind of frailty that makes everyone ignore that they are on a set at that moment. The distinction between a character and an actor totally disintegrated. That degree of vulnerability is practically non-existent in most performers, regardless of their level of skill. Maintain a barrier between roles and themselves. It's a survival mechanism is essential. Separation in order to prevent being eaten by the performance's weight. Although Depp did not defend himself at that time, didn't sugarcoat the suffering, he gave it all, without pretense. And for individuals who saw it, that sequence didn't seem Toon Man's fabrication, felt like the real thing at last, expressing what the world had never before really heard from him. And however it wasn't done for recognition or cares, there's something pleasantly shed on with this project without pretense. A limited independent budget with little lighting configurations and a second-hand wardrobe. The entire production appears to reflect a desire for genuineness, according to reports. Jordan, the director, told Thestar from the beginning that this movie was intended to be performed. It was intended to be felt. That she promoted improvisation, uncomfortable quietness. She handed Depp Therum to include his personal recollections into Theral, not to make people feel wonderful, but to respect them for making that choice to come first. Cinematic gloss is subordinated to emotional honesty. Says a lot about the type of story they are attempting to convey, that it isn't about creating an entertaining movie, that is about creating a movie that recognizes that there's something nearly poetic about this project's timing. During Depp's lifetime, following years of being mocked in the media for his personal troubles were reported in tabloids. Names suffused with countless headlines. This position enables him to recover thestory, not by downplaying his history, but by turning it into art, which is what true storytelling doesn't provide. Happy endings or tidy resolutions, provides the truth in all its ugliness and suffering. For Depp, whispers of the beauty, perhaps the most obvious, is the front line expression of his identity. Yet, when all the film's outfits are removed, the ripples of quiet power have already started. Outside of the sector, early screenings for some insiders and critics have produced a murmur about something remarkable. Not because the movie is dazzling or groundbreaking in its design, but due to the fact that it lingers. And one critic is said to have walked the Harchanable to leave a private screening talk for a few minutes. An author characterized it as a depiction of suffering that doesn't plead for pity. Instead, it requests be observed, and that's the type of influence Seth. It is not limited to the screen type of movie that makes its way into discussions that continue long after the lights have gone out for Depp's devoted followers. This role might seem like a turning point or a culmination, time at which the artistry ultimately shines, considering the depth of his emotions. He's always to get that for novices. It might be for the first time, they don't perceive him as a bigger life idol, but as a man. He endured and hurt while attempting to understand Thethi Globe with his labor, and for Depp perhaps this is the first time he's felt free to utilize that piece as a way solace of the remembrance redemption in a world of social media. It's simple to forget sound bites from the media and rumors about celebritious actors. Are individuals, they portray genuine sorrow, genuine regrets, and genuine experiences. Depp has been hidden for decades. Characters, withdrawing into parts that enable him to get away from his own tale, but he doesn't. In Whispers of the Front Line, doesn't run. Instead, he enters steeled-hearted but unwavering and provides something amazing in its sensitivity. This isn't the type of movie that will be the biggest hit at the box office. Dominating predictions for the awards season may never even make it. To the large audience it is worthy, yet it is irrelevant. What matters to Johnny is what it stands for: Depp for his mastery of narrative, and for anyone with a history of carrying something defect to say out loud, it serves as a reminder that the best films aren't about escapism, is about connecting with empathy. Truth. And during this performance, Johnny Depp leads. He doesn't just act. Keep in mind that he heals, and for those observing, maybe they will too. So, do you believe that this might be Johnny Depp's strongest performance to date? If you've seen those pictures that went viral, if you felt as you watch, something stirs inside of you. He knelt in the alleyway littered with debris. Clinging to hurt and memories, then you already understand the response. This isn't merely it's a reckoning in another film. And if you want more stories that go on behind the scenes and beyond the surface observance, that investigate the reasons underlying the why, don't you want to miss our upcoming video in which we examine the psychological cost encountered while recording his sequence in Spain. Trust that is extremely powerful for us. It's equally captivating in the meantime. If this tale touched you in any way, click like and subscribe to see more. Additionally, remember to ring the bell so when we drop, you're the first to know. More information that breaks through the clutter, because we do more than simply watch films here. We sense them. Until our next visit, inquisitive, compassionate, and never fearful, examine more than just the script.